Last Thursday my son watched me turn 8 years old. He watched me in the living room of the house where we still live, on a factory-sealed blank tape I had brought home less than an hour earlier. There was never a camera in that room. I know because I remember the day. I still own a VCR. I use it often enough that I keep blank tapes in the cabinet beneath the television. I have always bought the Japanese ones when I can find them. The picture holds up better, the cases do not crack, and the tape does not drag after a few recordings. My son makes fun of me for caring. That Thursday, I found 6 of them at a small electronics store across town. Same brand, same lot number, each one wrapped in clear plastic with the paper seal intact. I bought all 6. At home, I opened one, slid it into the VCR, and set the timer to record a movie that night. Then a neighbor called me outside to look at a fallen branch between our yards. When I came back, my son was sitting on the floor in front of the television. He said, "Dad, is that Grandpa?" The picture was washed out and soft around the edges. Our living room was on the screen, but the walls were yellow instead of white, and the old furnace grate was still beneath the window. My father knelt beside it with a red-handled screwdriver. My mother stood behind him, holding a dish towel. Between them sat a skinny boy in striped pajamas. Me. I remembered that morning. The furnace had stopped during the first cold week of October. My father took the grate off and told me to hold the screws. I dropped one into the vent. He spent an hour looking for it while my mother tried not to laugh. On the tape, I watched the screw leave my hand. The view never moved. It came from high in the corner near the ceiling. We had never owned a movie camera. No shelf had ever been mounted there. There was nothing in that corner except wallpaper. I stopped the tape and pulled it out. The white label was still blank. There was no writing beneath it, no second label, no sign that the cassette had been opened. I checked the plastic wrapper in the trash. It had the store price sticker and the matching lot number. My son asked me to play it again. Instead, I opened a second tape. This one showed Christmas Eve, maybe 3 years later. My sister was asleep on the couch in a paper crown. My mother crossed the room carrying 4 mugs. My father was trying to untangle a string of colored lights. There was no birthday, no accident, nothing a family would have chosen to film. Just 10 quiet minutes in a room I had not seen that way in decades. I forgot to be afraid for a while. I opened the third tape. My grandmother stood alone at the kitchen counter, rolling dough in the late afternoon. The calendar on the wall was from 1961, years before I was born. On the 4th, my mother helped my sister with a school costume. On the 5th, rain tapped the windows while my father read the newspaper and our old dog slept against his boot. Every view came from a place where no camera had been. Every scene belonged to this house. My son wanted to keep opening them. I told him we would save the last one. Then he asked who was sitting at the end of the table. We had gone back to the first tape. My father was on his knees beside the furnace. My mother was laughing into the dish towel. At the far end of the dining table, almost outside the frame, something sat with its hands resting in its lap. At first I thought it was a damaged patch in the picture. When I say it was dark, I do not mean a dark-skinned person, and I do not mean someone dressed in black. It was not a shadow or a silhouette. It had the proportions of a human being, but no light came back from it. The sunlit wall around it was visible. The edge of the chair was visible. The shape itself had no face, no fabric, no surface at all. My mother switched on the lamp as she passed. The table brightened. The shape did not. It did not look at us. There was no camera for it to look at. It simply sat with my family. We checked the Christmas tape. The figure was there too, in an armchair near the tree, facing the television with everyone else. My father stepped in front of it twice while fighting with the lights. He never paused. My sister woke, crossed the room, and reached over the arm of its chair to take a piece of candy from a bowl. Neither of them seemed to see it. On the kitchen tape, the figure stood beside my grandmother while she rolled the dough. Late sunlight fell directly across its shoulders and disappeared. She spoke to herself, measured flour, and once reached through the space near its elbow for a jar. On the tape with the school costume, my mother crossed between the couch and the coffee table. The figure was seated on the floor in her path. As she approached, it drew its knees back just enough to let her pass. She did not look down. That was the first time I understood that it was not just part of the picture. It accounted for us. We did not account for it. The fifth tape was worse only because it was so peaceful. My father read the newspaper. The dog slept against his boot. The figure sat beside the dog and moved one lightless hand slowly over its fur. The dog's ear flicked at the rain. It never lifted its head. My son whispered, "Maybe it lives here." I told him to go upstairs. After he left, I watched every tape from the beginning. The figure was always there. Sometimes it sat with us. Sometimes it stood in a doorway while someone washed dishes or folded laundry. Once, it was visible only in the mirror over the hall table, waiting behind my father as he put on his coat. I had missed it because it never announced itself. It did not creep closer. It did not raise its hands. It behaved like a quiet relative who knew the shape of our routines and had no need to be noticed. The next morning, I drove back to the electronics store for the rest of the batch. The clerk checked the shelf, then a clipboard beneath the counter. He said the supplier in Japan had withdrawn that lot. Some possible problem with the magnetic coating. He had boxed up the remaining tapes before opening. He sounded annoyed because he would have to mail them back. I asked if anyone else had returned one. He said no. I bought 2 blank tapes from another manufacturer and went home. One showed gray static. The other recorded the morning news exactly as it should. For the first time since Thursday, I felt foolish. Relieved but foolish. Then I put the first Japanese tape back in. The furnace was gone. The recording now showed my mother setting the table on a summer evening. The picture was rougher than before. Thin bands rolled across it, and the colors bled at the edges, as if someone had recorded over the tape without fully erasing what had been there. The figure stood at the sink, holding a plate while my mother placed silverware around the table. I checked the second tape. Different scene. My sister doing homework on the stairs while the figure waited on the landing above her. The third showed my father asleep in front of a late baseball game. The figure watched from the other end of the couch. Every tape had changed. Every picture was a little worse. And now that I knew where to look, the figure was never difficult to find. My son came downstairs before I reached the 6th tape, the one we had saved unopened. He was wearing his green school shirt. He set a blue mug of tea on the table and sat beside me. I broke the paper seal. I removed the plastic. I showed him the clean cassette and the empty label. Then I put it in the VCR. The screen flickered. We saw the room we were sitting in, with the walls white and the new curtains my wife had hung in spring. We saw ourselves at our present ages. My son wore the same green shirt. The small bleach mark below its collar was in the picture. The blue mug stood in the same place on the table, with steam rising from it. But on the tape we were talking. My son said, "Are you going to throw them away?" The version of me on the screen said, "I haven't decided." We had not had that conversation. The figure sat some distance behind us on the bench in the dining room. Its hands rested on its knees. Its featureless head was turned slightly in our direction, as if it were listening. On the screen my son asked, "Do you think it's still here?" The version of me beside him did not answer. In the actual room my son looked at me. Then he looked toward the empty dining room bench. I looked behind the couch, into the doorway, and at the chair beside the television. My son was doing the same thing, searching every ordinary place where a quiet guest might sit. We did not see anything. That was the problem.